Cool. And we're live. Kareem, I think, has like been waiting for us on YouTube. What's up, Kareem? Kareem said sent the link on Discord. Are you saying the link to this stream or something else? I'm also I had a tweet scheduled, so I need to do better about like scheduling tweets to promote stuff. I feel like I could. I thought about doing this before, and I built some logic around it. But if I have streams that are scheduled, I should be able to backtrack from there and, like, auto schedule tweets. Although with
Yeah,
the Twitter API now, I don't
I
know what
wouldn't
all is
spend too
changing there.
much time
Yeah,
implementing that right now.
yeah. Well, and I still feel like hear mixed feedback on that every single day. Because for a while, like,
They keep
they
like
keep changing stuff.
postponing it.
Yeah. So it did because I thought it was supposed to be this past Monday, but
Hmm.
has it gotten postponed again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think they just say stuff and then then they
And then
magically expect
realize
all the
maybe
engineers to make it happen. And then the engineers are like, but
but that doesn't work that way. Yeah. Raja just joined on YouTube. Raja, how's it going? I love to when people join. Let us know where you're joining from. I love seeing people joining from all over the world. I think that's like one of the really cool things about doing live streams and
hmm
online content is just seeing people from across the world. So, Dr. Aram, oh, that's a cool like code, the green code logo with Dr. Aram. Very cool. Cool. What are you drinking anything in particular? You're drinking
Um,
tea?
yeah, herbal tea,
Nice.
tea without caffeine because it's already late here.
Mhm. Yep. What part of the Netherlands are you in?
I'm very near to The Hague, which is
Oh, cool.
where the government is.
Yeah. I've been to Amsterdam 3
Hmm.
times. FedEx actually acquired, TNT, which is a shipping company that was
Yep.
based in Hoofddorp,
Hmm.
and, so I went there 3 times for work and loved it, and I just never quite had enough time to, like, go out to The Hague, but I was always interested in doing that.
Right. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Amsterdam is different from the
Yeah.
rest of the Netherlands
I would think so, yeah.
in that it's like it's a tiny Dutch Disneyland,
Mhm.
really. Like
Yep.
it's not a place where people really live
Yeah.
if you look at like the city center.
Mhm.
I actually was in Amsterdam today. Was doing a presentation at a university
Oh, cool.
this morning.
Yeah. Nice. Is like an hour train ride or so?
So I went by car.
Okay.
It's a little under an hour, but then I spent 3 quarters looking for parking. So that wasn't great.
Yep. Yeah. Alan says, "I heard it's got a thriving tech quarter in Amsterdam."
Yeah. So if you know the Next Web, they're a very large conference and like
Mm,
tech news website. They're from Amsterdam. They have this really large campus that they started together with Google, but I think they left now. And there's always been a lot of startups,
cool.
primarily in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Though we have other tech hubs as well. So
Mhm.
near Eindhoven is another big tech hub in the Netherlands, mostly because ASML is like in the city next to Eindhoven. So there's a lot of like hard tech happening there.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, I want to, there's a couple of I think there were a couple of conferences recently in Amsterdam, or maybe they're coming up in the summer. I can't remember. Or is it Vue.js Amsterdam, I think just happened, and maybe another one.
Yeah.
I can't remember. But um I'd love to go to one of those sometime in the near future.
Hmm. Yeah. In June there's also CSS Day.
Okay.
Excuse me, which is a lot of fun. And then at the end of the year, there's the Frontiers Conference. Last year that was in Utrecht, though
Mhm.
traditionally it's been in Amsterdam. That's very nice as well. If you can go there, it's great. Lots of very high quality speakers, great atmosphere.
Cool. I'm gonna I'm kind of looking at that behind the scenes. Maybe I'll make it out there next time.
Cool.
We'll see. Do you want to go ahead and get started? Do you want to
Yeah, sure.
introduce yourself and a little bit about your background, and then we can dive into what Polypane is, and then get kind of hands on with it?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Killian. I'm from the Netherlands. I've been building websites for nearly 20 years now. I used to run an internet agency, so I built web apps and mobile apps for other companies. Um, and while I was doing that, I was always like building tools to help me do my work better.
Hmm.
So I built like a to-do app, of course, and an image compression app. And yeah, I do need to drink water. Thank you.
I hate when I go through phases like that when I'm live. Either like my eye is really watery or
Hmm.
my throat is scratchy. Actually, I posted a clip of this from a video yesterday, the day before. I was recording a video for an hour, and once you talk for an hour, like your voice kind of
Hmm.
goes, and
Yeah.
every 30 seconds or a minute, I would have to stop and cough. And I
Yeah.
eventually like got rid of my face from the video because it was a tutorial, so it was mostly code.
Oh,
But I
yeah,
just got
yeah.
rid of my face at the end because it's
Hmm.
easier to cut stuff when you're not showing your face and you're just editing the audio away from the cough.
Yeah.
So
So
anyway.
I think right now I already did a presentation today. So I already
Mm,
spent like an hour plus talking.
mhm,
But I also have this huge light
mhm.
shining right in my face.
Yep.
To make sure that I don't look like I'm fully in the dark.
Mhm.
Uh, but we'll
Content
make it
creation is
work.
the
We'll make it
challenge.
work. No
Yeah.
worries.
Yep.
So I was saying I was always building apps, and then Polypane was one of those. Um, it really started when I switched to Sketch for my design work. And Sketch back then had artboards, which Photoshop back then didn't have. Now all the tools have it, but back then it was super special and really nice because you could design your website in like your mobile, your desktop, and your
Mm,
tablet version, like all in one huge canvas. Um, and that was really nice because I could see like I had a really good overview of what each component looked like at different sizes. And I could already think about like how do they relate to each other while designing. Um, but then when I went implementing designs, I was stuck with a single window again that I had to manually resize, and that
mhm.
felt really dumb.
I've been
So I
doing a lot
built
of that recently. Yep.
so I built like a really crappy first version, and then started using it and liked it and improved it here and there. Didn't really think much about it. Like it was just another tool that I used until at one point I was comparing my hours, like with Polypane and without
Mm,
Polypane, and it saved me like 60% of my development time.
that's cool.
So that's when I decided like I can probably improve this even more and take it more serious. Um, and so that's what I've been doing for essentially the past 4, 5-ish years, building Polypane. Polypane is a browser for web developers. It helps you with responsive design, but also accessibility and website quality. The goal is really, if you're building websites, there's a ton of stuff you need to consider and think about, uh, and your browser offers you like no help at all. It even like actively works against you because what a browser is built to do is be as forgiving as possible. So you can write invalid HTML, you can
Mm,
write like super crappy CSS, and and the browser will just try and make the best of it
yeah.
because that's what best for your visitors. Like if the browser can sort of make it work for your visitors, then the visitors have a good experience and they're none the wiser.
Mhm.
That's not what you want if you're developing a website. If you're developing a website, you really want your browser to say, maybe this bit, maybe you could do
Be
that
different.
like
Yeah.
this way, or if you focus on this a little bit more, you can make your website much faster. So that's what I'm doing with Polypane, like really making a browser for people that build websites rather than people that need to consume websites.
Yeah. Cool. And what we're gonna do is you got my site like pulled up in
Hmm.
Polypane, and I think I forget how we titled it. What's wrong with my website?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And for everybody's awareness here, like I have done no preparation for this. I haven't touched anything on my site. Like I sent you the link, you pulled it up, and we'll kind of see what pops up. I have no idea what it's going to be. So this will be a learning experience and just like a fun
Yeah.
walkthrough for me as well. And if you have questions and comments and things, just throw those in the chat, and we'll make sure to address those and bringing them up. Do you want me to go ahead and show your screen where you have it
Yeah,
up,
yeah, sounds good. So, like, just to reiterate, the point is not that we all go and bash James.
or is it?
Uh, no, it's not my intention. But if you want to want to do that, go ahead. Um, but it's I think it's very interesting to also see, like,
Mhm.
James is a really good developer. There's not a ton of things wrong with this site, but it's still very easy to overlook stuff.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, so you can rest easy. I didn't find any huge problems, but there's still things like we can improve.
Yep. Absolutely.
So let's do that.
Cool.
From my side, I checked your homepage
Hmm.
pretty thoroughly, but I didn't check the other pages, and I thought it
Okay.
would be fun to discover those together, and then have do the homepage first, and have that be a little more structured.
Cool. And
Uh,
Chris Demars, who is Split Software on Twitch, big accessibility person. He is saying the big question is it accessible? And that will be part of like the things that Polypane will catch, right? Is accessibility issues.
yeah.
Cool. So we'll get into all that. A couple of
Hmm.
positive comments on the site so far, which I think there is, and I don't know the solution to this, and this may be something you'll get to. I think there's accessibility issues with the typing effect here because I don't. I think from like a screen reader perspective, like what context
Hmm.
they get or don't get with that, and maybe we'll get there or not. But that's one of the things that's on my
Yeah,
plate
we
to
can
take
look
on.
into that.
Yeah.
So the first thing I wanted to do is, right now you just see like what I've decided is the default view for Polypane,
Mm.
which is a small mobile phone at 320, which mobile phones that you can buy now haven't been 320 for a long time,
Yeah.
but mobile phones out there still are. So it's still an important size to check.
Yep.
Then a small tablet. Interesting thing there is that it's usually the size that people forget. 'Cause they'll check their own phone, and then they'll check their own laptop, and maybe they'll check their own iPad. But then there's the sizes in between that people forget. Um, but those sizes in between also get used a lot. For example, even on an iPad, you can do the split screen thing, and then suddenly it's like you have two small tablets side by side. Um, so we can do a quick check here and see how you set up your breakpoints. It might be a little small, so I'll just go through them.
By the
It
way, I'll put a link. I meant to do this a second ago. Here's the link to the site if people want to go there directly and
Oh
open
yeah,
it up.
sure. So what I can see here is that you have a pretty good spread of breakpoints. They all work on top of each other, so you only use min width. So you keep adding
Mhm.
CSS, which is great. And there's no overlap, and there's no breakpoints that are really close together, which
Mhm.
is usually a sign of like brittle content. Like
Yeah,
if you
if
need
you're
two breakpoints like 10 pixels apart just to make something work, you can
then
probably
it's a little
do
questionable.
something with the design
Yeah,
to make it more resilient.
yeah. And
But
this is from for context for everybody else, this is all written in Tailwind. So what you're saying is not even an intentional decision that I've
no,
made. I think that is stuff that just comes from
Mm-hmm.
Tailwind. Now I do
Yeah.
leverage the, like, responsive classes in Tailwind
Mm-hmm.
that translates to this, but I didn't make these specific intentions to the or decisions to that level of detail on my own. It's through Tailwind.
Perfect. Yeah, they have a really nice
Mhm.
split. Um, so the first thing I noticed is on this mobile phone size is if you open the menu, then podcast
Mm.
falls below the fold on like this is like a smallish Android phone in terms of height.
Yeah, I hadn't so I've looked at, for context, just in Chrome Developer Tools, I've gone to, like, different screen sizes and widths, but I haven't
Mm-hmm.
gotten to the point where I've seen a, the height bottom out.
Yeah.
So any of the ones that I checked just didn't catch this before.
Yeah, and so what you see is that you also can't scroll. You can't scroll in here. So how I would fix that is you have some pretty big padding here up top. So 80
Mhm.
pixels up top. And then uh, between these, you also have quite a bit of padding or spacing. So if we open the developer tools, we can see that it's 5 rems. Um,
And that's the let's see. I'm actually following along in my code.
mhm.
So that's padding
The
in the mobile menu.
Yeah, so that's the Pi 20,
Mhm.
which corresponds to 5 rem. But what I would do instead is I'm using padding block to do essentially the same as padding top and bottom in one go. And then maybe try
Is padding
5.
wait, can we pause on that? That's the thing?
Yeah,
Padding
sure.
block is like padding
Yeah,
top and
so
bottom?
this is part of a new thing called logical properties.
Okay.
Um, if you have left, top, right, and bottom, then that specific combination for a specific design only really works if you're writing in a Western language that goes from left to right, top to bottom.
Uh-huh.
If you have logical properties, then there's two axes, the block axis and the inline axis. And they change
Huh.
depending on the uh, type of writing system that you use.
Oh,
So
which
in
is
Western
similar
languages,
that, like, concept of, like, main axis and cross axis like you have in
yeah,
Flexbox where you can switch it. This is
yeah.
a similar thing. Interesting.
Hmm.
And Chris has called me out for having not seen his talk on the topic. I definitely missed out, Chris. Yeah, that's interesting. I had no idea that this is the thing.
So if we switch that to like 5 VH, what then happens is that the padding up top here becomes dependent on the height of the screen. And
Mm,
now podcast works. And of course, like you can tweak that. You can see like does 4 look better? Does 5 look better? Um, that's
okay.
by making it dependent on the height of the screen. You can sort of fix this padding where it's not a fixed value, but it's dependent on the height.
And
So that,
even there's still like even if you're leveraging VH units, even though it's
mhm.
proportional to the height of the screen, you could still have a similar issue, right? Because if
Yeah. So if you keep adding things, then
yeah,
then what I would do is make this thing a scrollable container,
mhm, yep,
so
okay,
that if you scroll, the menu scrolls and not the rest of the page.
cool, that makes sense. And right now, this mobile menu is just fixed, and it is I think inset 0, yeah. So inset 0 in Tailwind sets top
Hmm.
left, bottom, and right all to
Yeah.
0. So it just sits on top of the entire
Hmm.
screen, but does not have the ability to scroll.
Yeah. And
Okay.
you can add like overflow auto to make it scroll when it needs to.
Yeah. Okay.
We can do that too. I think this is the one. Yeah. And then we'll just
Yeah, make the padding really big. Okay.
make the
And if
padding
the
really big, and then
yeah.
and one thing I want to call out here is that you want to use overflow auto. What I see people do a lot is use overflow scroll, which makes sense because you want it to be scrollable. But people do overflow scroll, and on a Mac, it still looks good. But on Windows, overflow scroll means always draw a scroll bar,
Mhm.
even if you don't need to scroll. Whereas
Yep.
overflow auto is add a scroll bar when needed, but hide it when you don't need it. And that looks much better on Windows and Linux. So keep that in mind
Cool.
next time you try to do overflow scroll.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it was Mattia was asking about the browser analysis tool. So this is Polypane, which I put the link into the chat. And this is created by Killian, who's the actual creator and is walking me through the tool, which is pretty neat so far. So we are going through my site, kind of analyzing it, calling out issues, and talking about ways to solve some of these problems on my site. So
Hmm.
cool.
And then for the rest of the homepage, we don't really need to look uh, at the design itself, because it doesn't break at any of the breakpoints that I could find. But we do get to share some tips in regarding like the HTML structure. So if we go here to the meta panel, that parses your site for like all the meta tags and metadata surrounding
Mhm.
your page. So that could be like a robots.txt or a web manifest file. Of course, all the meta tags in your header. And then it gives you like additional information surrounding this. So title, favicon, description, doc type, viewport, no comments. Then we get to mobile friendly. So mobile friendly is a thing that Google came up with, which is a set of a few different tests to see if a website verifies as mobile friendly or not. The checks in Polypane are a little more strict than the ones that you can find in Google's online mobile friendly checker. And what it found is that on your mobile size, there are tab targets that are too small and too close together. And I think it's these three because the tab target sizes um, are pretty strict.
Which
But
can you highlight which ones you're talking about again?
um, yeah, so these
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
three.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we turn on the target size and we'll do 48 pixels, then you can see that these three,
Hmm. Okay.
they get a red border, and that red border shows how much space there should actually be around that element. And the reason you need that red border is because you can look at this square as like roughly the size of your thumb. So if you're trying to click Tailwind, you could accidentally like click
Mhm.
Astro or Netlify because you can't quite see it because your thumb is obscuring like these different sizes.
Yep. Interesting. I definitely had not thought about that. The actual target
So
size.
yeah,
Very
so
interesting.
Polypay
Yeah.
it goes through all your tab targets and then figures out like how much space does it actually need. Uh, does it
Yeah.
need more than it currently has?
Very cool.
Um, then
That's a great
next is
suggestion.
the uh, yeah.
just that's a great suggestion. I'm if I seem distracted, it's because I'm looking at my code as you're explaining the
Oh
thing. So
yeah.
I'm looking at like the things that I've written. I wish we could like share two different screens, which unfortunately we can't.
Mhm.
But this is perfect. Yeah.
So the next one is a canonical URL. It's always good to add. And so for any of those that you don't have, you can just click to copy, because the canonical URL, and I'll just paste it in the address bar. It's a link with a rel of canonical, and it links to the current page. And this essentially tells Google, etc., that this is the authoritative place for this page.
Okay.
Because if you go to jamesqquick.com without the www, it also works.
Hmm.
And even though that forwards to the one with www, you want to tell Google, like, actually always use the version with www.
Yeah.
And that's what a canonical URL lets you do.
Okay. And it's also used in like if I cross post my content to Hashnote or something like that, I
Hmm.
include canonical URLs to the original blog post on my site, which if people link to the Hashnode one, gains credibility for my site. Like I get the benefit of that external link. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So um, Google doesn't really care about links; it cares about content, because that's what's valuable for people searching on Google. So if you have the same content in multiple places, then Google sort of like divides the SEO value across them. Whereas if
Mm,
all of them say, well, actually, from all of the places where the same content is, it's this URL that's the canonical one, the official one, then any like link value that goes towards all the others is passed through to
mhm.
your canonical URL.
Okay. So definitely something that I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
guess is a short answer.
yeah. And it's just
Perfect.
generally good practice to have that on your own site as well,
Okay. And
just to be sure.
is that on every is that on every like every page will have its own canonical link?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. So
I wouldn't use
every
just the
unique,
root link, but every page should have a canonical link for itself.
yeah.
Okay. So that would be something I would bake into like I've got a what do I call it
Yeah.
in my
You'd add
code?
that to your template.
Yep. I've got a base layout component and I would just
Yeah.
add that inside of actually I have a base head component. Okay. So cool.
And
So I
then
can add that in
you
my base
probably
head
add the
component.
slug there. Yeah.
Hmm. Yep.
Just make sure
Cool.
that you use the fully qualified URL. So including
Mhm.
HTTP and the domain name, etc.
Okay. That
Then
makes
we go
sense.
on to the theme color. Theme color is it's another meta tag that you can add to your head, and that is then shown in a bunch of different places. So, for example, the Safari browser can use your theme color to color the address bar, which looks really cool. It also shows on mobile Safari as the color behind your notch. And then on Android, it is also used to color the address bar. And then on Discord, it's used to color this line
Mm,
next to social shares.
wow.
So that's
I
another one worth adding to
yeah,
like add a little bit more branding
yeah. So
across your site.
this looks like I don't know if you had that. This is gonna not come through very well, but I'm putting in the chat an example of this that I just found. So it's a meta tag with the name of theme color.
Oh yeah, so I can just copy
Yeah.
that as well.
Oh, so you've
Uh,
got okay, cool. So it's got like you just copy you can copy that from there. So this is kind of built in, like it already gives you the
yeah,
snippet type thing.
yeah,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
And then
Because if you
for
have to look that up,
me,
then uh,
yep.
And you probably aren't going to because you have a bunch of other stuff to do. So
Yep.
for any of these, you can just copy over. If it's missing, it will do a suggestion for you.
Cool.
If it's wrong, it will show a warning, etc. Other
Love
stuff
it.
looks good. Your char set is set correctly. Your language is set properly. You don't have a robots.txt, but if you don't care, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, what is I actually don't know what robots.txt is for.
So robots.txt is a little file that you add to your domain root. So
Mhm.
jamesqquick.com/robots.txt. And in it, you can tell different crawlers what they're allowed to index and what not. So if
That's
you look
right,
at
okay.
WordPress sites, very often they'll have a disallow star. So star
Mhm.
means every crawler, and then it'll say that that they can't index the login page.
Yep.
And then there
Makes sense.
are other like news sites that have huge lists of all these various crawlers to make sure that that they don't index everything constantly, that they don't index specific archive pages, just to keep like their online searchability profile clean, as it were.
Okay. But
Um,
not a concern if I don't
no,
have it.
I don't think so. So Polypane will also show other stuff if you have that. So there's something called humans.txt, which
Mm.
instead of robots, you
It's
use that.
targeted at humans.
So the idea is in your humans.txt, uh, you tell people which humans worked on this website.
Mhm.
So you can be like, James did the design, and James did the implementation, and James did etc. etc. I very frequently see it used as like a sort of recruiting tool as well, because the type of people that look for humans.txt are probably the type of people that you want working on your website. There's also a security.txt, which explains to people how they can responsibly disclose security issues with your app. And there's also an ads.txt, um, which can tell advertisers which platforms you support, so that they can advertise on your site.
Okay.
And if those are available, they're shown. But if you don't have them, then it's not shown. Same for Web Manifest, for OEmbed, LD. Um, these are all like different types of files that different CMSs
That have
add.
different meanings, yeah.
But we also just go through your meta tags. So there's the Open Graph tags. If you have an OG image, then you can consider adding an OG image alt as well,
Hmm.
which is the alternative description for that image. Now, it's
Didn't
not
know
an
that was a
error
yeah.
because while OG image alt and Twitter image alt are both spec'd by Facebook and Twitter responsively, they don't actually implement that at the moment.
Huh,
So right
okay.
now, if you would add it, no one would use it. But if they add support in the future, you would automatically make your embeds a little bit better.
Already, yeah, okay. By the way, Brady, joining from Silicon Valley, welcome, welcome. Um, okay, super cool. So that would be OG, uh, not apostrophe, colon, image, colon, alt,
Yeah,
and then the
the
second one
Twitter
would be
one
the same thing
is,
with Twitter, image, alt. Yeah, cool.
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then there's also like a bunch of other meta tags. So I can see that you used Astro,
Mhm.
some link tags.
Oh, that's cool.
What's interesting here is that you don't have any preload tags or pre-connect tags. Now you might not need those, but if you have those, they get added to a different accordion. And that would be things like early connecting to CDNs or preloading specific files for subsequent pages.
And is that up to
To
the
like,
framework typically to
usually it's the
make that
framework
decision?
that implements that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because is that like with Next.js, for example, you hover on a
for
link
example.
and then it goes and prefetches things for that link, like in case you click on it?
It's the same technology but used slightly differently. Yeah.
Okay.
So the next one is dynamic, um,
Mhm.
done through JavaScript, and this is through HTML. You
Okay.
can, if for example, if you use Google Fonts, then you link to the Google Fonts CSS file, which is on a specific domain, but the fonts are on the actual font files are on another domain. So what happens is, as your HTML gets read out, uh, the browser comes across the CSS file domain. It does a DNS fetch to find the DNS information. Then it downloads the CSS. Then it parses the CSS. Then it finds another domain and it needs to do a DNS fetch for that domain at
Mhm.
that point. Whereas if you add a DNS prefetch, a meta tag, then the browser already knows that you're going to connect to that domain that has the font files. And it can already get the DNS information like asynchronously in
Mm.
tandem, and
Okay.
that saves a few milliseconds.
Yeah.
Um, and all of
Interesting.
that adds up.
Okay. Um,
Speaking
by
of
the way,
adding up, yeah.
sorry, it's like secret behind the scenes thing. I was starting to look into my code because of after for a canonical link. So I was like adding these tags in here. I included the image alt tag for both OG image alt and Twitter image alt. Then I added in the canonical link, and I was trying to figure out how my OG URL had worked before because it's just referencing astro.url, and I thought that that variable was just like the root of
Mm-hmm.
my application, and I realized that I was referencing astro.url in every page and not
Mm-hmm.
customizing that per page.
Oh, yeah.
But astro.url is actually the full URL of the page you're on, so it updates itself.
Oh, cool.
And so I can use that directly
Yeah,
inside of the canonical link and not have to add any custom logic myself.
that's sweet.
So it looks like if people are curious, and formatting won't be great, but it just put in that astro.url property there, and that should work.
Nice.
Yeah, cool.
Um, so all of those meta tags combined creates these social media previews.
Which is
Um,
very handy, by the way.
yeah, because it
Um,
also works on localhost.
yes,
And I spent
yeah,
many, many days like
yeah.
meticulously copying and keeping it up to date.
Yep.
But there's like Twitter, Facebook, Slack, LinkedIn, Discord,
Wow.
Telegram Web, and then Google search results. And
So
I'll let
good.
you guess. I added these like 3 years ago. Um, Out of the ones I just mentioned,
Mhm.
which one did you think got updated first?
What do you mean by updated first?
Like which site changed first?
After you wrote your code,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
side
So
changed
I
their stuff?
copied it like pixel perfectly, and then one of the
Uh-huh.
sites changed like 2 days later after I released it.
I would guess Google or Twitter, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it was Google actually. So they used to have like the link be this green thing
Mhm.
um, under the title, and they switched it up. They made it look more or less the same as the mobile
Okay.
version.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have guessed that because like up until then, the Google design was
Had
like
been the same
five,
forever.
6 years
Yeah.
old, and it
That's
just
funny.
hadn't
And
changed.
as soon as you do something,
Yeah. Whereas
um,
Twitter has actually been like before
consistent.
that, it has done a lot of different changes. Like it used to have icons, and the order here was switched around. But they've been fairly consistent in like the last
Yeah.
2 years. Now, of course, I've mentioned this now, so I'm sure they're gonna change it like tomorrow. But that's fine. I update these whenever something changes.
Yeah.
It's been
That's
very interesting, like figuring out which sites use which values and then also which fallback values. Because both Twitter and Facebook will happily use the others' meta tags if that's what's available. And that makes sense again, because like they just want to show the prettiest possible thing to their visitors. But yeah, that's not what their specification says. So
mhm.
that's been fun to figure out.
um by the way, you kind of you mentioned doing these pixel perfect. I
Hmm.
don't know what I imagine you would do to get these, but like to do this preview, you're not like using their API to send you a preview of it. You're building like HTML and CSS for
Yeah,
this preview directly yourself.
yeah.
I don't know why I didn't like that makes total sense. I don't know why I thought it was actually getting something from somewhere else. But the point of that is like it's your responsibility, unfortunately, to update these as these other platforms make updates. But having them all, like there's not
Hmm.
is there a tool that does this on its own? Because that is like one thing that's so
So
valuable, especially with you mentioned being able to use it with localhost while you're developing. That's
yeah,
huge.
yeah. So that's the biggest help, I think, being able to use it with localhost,
Mhm.
because then you don't have to depend on like your client to point out the
Yeah.
spelling mistakes.
Mhm.
Um, um, but yeah, so each of these are like a React component that I manually maintain.
So cool. Wow. I did not. Yeah, that's like I feel like that by itself is a feature worth paying for.
Yeah, and so like that, there's like Twitter and Facebook previews out there, but I haven't seen like a Discord and a Telegram
Mm,
preview or
yeah,
LinkedIn, because honestly, no one really cares about LinkedIn. But I figured, you know, I'm gonna add it anyway.
yeah. Actually, I've heard more and more people. I think there are a good amount of people that do a lot on LinkedIn, and I've heard more people doing more with LinkedIn recently because of the up in
Twitter
the air
weirdness.
of Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would expect that to get some
Hmm.
more attention. By the way, I know there's a free trial for Polypaint. Is there also like a forever free tier or after the free
No,
tri okay.
no. So yeah, I'm doing this on my own.
Mhm.
Um, I like to give really high quality, really personal support, and I wouldn't be able to do that
Yep.
with a free forever tier. That being said, if you are a student and you have access to the GitHub Student Developer Pack,
Mm,
then you can use it for free.
cool.
So it's free for students. If you're a charitable organization or an
Yep.
educator, you can get a discount. And then if you have a job, then you can ask your employer.
Okay. Um, it'd be good. I'd be interested in creating like this is always the problem with creating content and being excited about everything is there's never enough time. We talked about this earlier.
Hmm.
But if I can squeeze it in sometime soon, it'd be good to do like a short video to promote it. And
Yeah,
then
I mean, I would love that.
yeah. Maybe we could talk about I don't know if you'd be interested in doing like a discounted or extended trial or something for people that
Hmm.
watch the video exclusively or something. Mattia in the chat is also asking, do you have an option for like a lifetime
I don't at
one-time
the
payment?
moment.
Yeah.
No. So I release a new version every month.
Oh wow. Okay.
It has new versions or new features. It updates the Chromium rendering engine so
Hmm.
that it's always up to date,
Okay.
um, or sometimes even ahead. So the current version, for example, already supports CSS nesting, uh,
Mm, cool.
which will be released in Chrome in the next release.
Yeah.
Um, and so I haven't figured out a way to reconcile that with a lifetime
Yeah.
one-time payment. And this just feels like more fair.
Yeah.
Um, and it also means that I do have to update it every month because that's the deal, right?
Yep.
Um, so and regarding the meta panel, I think I'll be adding Mastodon soon-ish.
Oh, yeah.
I just haven't figured out like which preview I'm going to use.
Okay.
'Cause there are a few, and I'm not sure like which of them makes sense yet. So if anyone in the chat has strong opinions, please let me know.
Mhm.
And for us, we'll then go from the meta panel to the outline panel. And we'll start with headings. Now, so this is the structure of your website as someone using assistive technologies
Mhm.
would look at it. And there's not a lot going on. So there's also not a lot that can
Yep.
go wrong. Um, you have one H1, that's good.
Yep.
Lots of sites don't have an H1,
Yep.
or they have multiple H1s. Just have one. And then what you did very nicely here is that you gave this heading an accessible name, which is James Q. Quick, developer, speaker, teacher. And because you gave it an accessible name using an area label, that means that whatever content is shown is not read out to people using assistive technologies.
Mhm.
And that works perfectly in this case.
That was actually so this I am not very experienced in this area, and that was something that someone suggested,
Mhm.
and so I added that, and so that helps get around the fact that if people are using a screen reader and I didn't have that, they would get this mix of I'm a speaker or I'm a teacher or blah blah blah.
Mhm.
It also gives me the ability to throw in my name there,
Yeah, so
and
that's the only thing
mm,
that I would have a comment about.
okay,
The accessible name is not a place to give additional context.
okay,
Um, it's a place to give like the accessible version of what you and I see.
okay,
And you and I don't see James Q. Quick for this
right,
particular heading.
okay,
So what I would do in this case is have an accessible name be I'm a developer, comma, speaker, comma,
yeah,
teacher, because
okay,
that gives the same information. Um, because like James Q. Quick is already read out loud because it's in your title, it's at the top of the page. So people already know it's your URL. People already know.
yep.
Um,
And is there any so that makes total sense. I just updated that behind the scenes. Is is there any benefit like is there any SEO attached to H1s? Like is there SEO value attached to H1s that I may be missing out on?
no, because from my understanding, and of course, like Google isn't super forthcoming about this,
Shocker.
but I do think they use the accessible name.
Mhm. Well, I mean, so if they use the accessible name,
Hmm.
would it if I were to flip this around completely and change the H1 to just be James Q Quick, for example, would
Yeah.
that be better for my SEO overall than I'm a speaker, teacher, developer, speaker, and teacher?
Um, like it depends.
Yeah.
Like if people are searching for James Q Quick, then yes. But I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that Google has already figured out that
Yeah.
if people search for James Q Quick,
This makes
they
sense.
probably want to go to this site.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So that's not an optimization I think you should worry about.
Alan in the chat is commenting, and Dr. Aram. I always thought an H1 very important. And I think you're not necessarily I don't think you're necessarily saying it's not. I think what you're saying is
No,
for
no,
this
no.
specific use case,
Hmm.
there's other things like the domain, like the title, and just associations over the years that my
Yeah,
name or searching that name in Google, it already has plenty to figure out who what my website is what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah.
Okay.
So Google's entire thing is, um, and this is the way I used to explain it to customers, because like most of my customers want to do keyword stuffing, etc.
Mhm.
Like all Google is trying to do is get a computer to look and uh, process your site as much as a human being as possible.
Mhm.
And it's just our job to make sure that we don't prevent it from doing so. But you can only trick them so much, and you also already see this with like the Chat GPT stuff, where one of the first signals Google gave was like, we're going to see when people use AI to write content, and we're going to give that like a that's going to be a negative signal.
Hmm.
So like the specific wording in your H1, it's good for you to think about on a content level. It's not something that is going to like radically change how well your site ranks in Google.
Mhm. Okay. And my like on other pages, all the H1s um should match up with like what those actual pages are. So,
Yeah, so that's what the suggestion is. Like the
mhm.
H1 is the what this page is about.
Yep.
So it's not on a website level, it's really on a page level.
Cool. Yeah, makes sense.
Um, and then for the rest, like there's a bunch of sections. I probably wouldn't have made this an H2, but it's not wrong either. Like it's a choice.
Yeah.
You can
What
and
would
people
you
do.
what would you make that? Just a regular P tag, if not an
Yeah,
H2?
probably.
Yeah. If
Like
they're
maybe I would do is like add an H2 tag above this that would be like either
here's my content or
visible
something.
or hidden, and it would be
Yeah.
like places you can find me
Right.
or something like
Yep.
that.
And then would you
Um,
do those as H3s or just regular
yeah, then
paragraphs?
that could be H3s.
Okay.
That would make more sense to me. But again, like this
Yep.
isn't wrong. It's just a different way.
Well, that
The
makes
only
sense
one
though,
I
because those are 3 things in kind of like a section, and a section in theory would have the H2,
yeah,
and then you'd go down from there. So
yeah.
I think logically that makes sense.
We'll get to sections.
Yeah.
The only one here is like my weekly newsletter. I would think that this is the legend of the form.
The what of the form?
Legend.
What do you mean by legend of the
So
form?
forms have something called a legend element. So it's literally just like legend. And
Didn't
that's
know this.
essentially the title of the
Ah,
form.
okay. And my code is split to where
Yeah.
I
So you have
have a
the form is
form.
here, and
Yeah.
then it doesn't make a ton of difference, but it would give the form a name as well. And that's
Hmm.
useful because if you give the form a name, it also becomes a landmark. Now, landmarks are things like nav, main, footer, section, um, and they are an alternative way of navigating through a website. So you have the headings, but also landmarks. And sections and forms can be landmarks if they have a name, and a name can be a title in them, or an area label, or an area labeled by. And if you don't add one, then uh, it's not considered a landmark, which is fine. Not all forms have to be. But yeah, like you said, This entire block could probably be a section in your main,
Mhm.
and then that would make more sense. And then the other thing is you do have navigation up here, but really the navigation along with your back to home link together should be a header element.
Say that one more time.
So the navigation that you have up here together
Mhm.
with your back to home link, those together should be wrapped in a header. Because logically, if your page has a main area and a footer, it also has a header. And we can see that because like this thing here is clearly a header. It's
Mhm.
just not marked up as one. So that's why Polypane suggests like, should this have a header? Of course, not
Interesting.
all pages need headers. Like if you have a sign up page, that's really just the form, like sign up, email, password, button that says sign up. Then that thing, it doesn't have a footer or a header. So it doesn't, not all pages need a header. But in this case, because you so clearly have one visually, it makes sense to add one.
And what you're talking about there is specifically the, like, nav bar, not the I'm a teacher
No,
portion?
no, no.
Okay.
So really the nav bar, yeah,
Okay. And so I can, I'm kinda going through and doing this myself. So just wrapping my nav bar in a header, and that's
yeah,
those are consistent across each page. So I'm
yeah,
just adding this in my, like, layout template.
yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And then how, oh, also Todd Libby on Twitch mentioned that he used Polypane, which is really awesome. So he's huge in
Cool.
accessibility, which you probably know each other already. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
um,
Well, actually, I met Todd for the first time in real life
in
at the same
London,
conference I met you in London.
yeah. Oh, cool. Very cool. Um, so question for me: what's the difference between the nav tag and the header tag?
So navigation or a nav tag really only contains site navigation, but a header tag is the like
More
the
general
thing
top
that
section.
repeats, yeah, that repeats on every page that comes before your content. So
Okay.
that also includes the logo, that can include like a search form, that can include
Mm,
if you have an SPA, like a notification area. So
okay.
it can have more than just
Okay.
navigation.
So Todd's saying exactly what you just said, encompasses everything in the header that is repeated site wide, which well, yes, it's good. It's good when you're on the same page.
Yeah,
So, so for me, in my case, those two are basically the same thing. So I have a header tag
yeah,
directly embedded inside of that is the nav tag, which includes the James Q Quick, which goes to the home, and then the hamburger menu, and then the regular links on wide
yes,
display. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Um, Yeah, Bavesh said they just joined the live stream, but we'll watch it tomorrow because SEO and the things being discussed are really interesting. This is fascinating. This is like so valuable. This is great. Alan, who's been watching and commenting, got to go and do dad taxi. I wish I could say notifications now firmly on. I appreciate that. Thanks for
cool.
joining and for commenting and asking questions and stuff. Really appreciate it.
And then from landmarks, we'll go to images. You don't have a ton of images,
Mm.
but I do have a ton of remarks.
Yeah.
So the first one is this nice image, which only shows here.
Hmm.
It doesn't have an alt attribute,
Yeah. I was
and
just looking at that.
yeah, and so it should have an alt attribute, and it should be empty because it's decorational. You can also figure out a
Mm.
way where it becomes a background image. So use it in the CSS, but really just adding alt um, is empty quotes
Is that
solves the issue because that means that the image won't be announced. It's essentially telling the
hmm,
browser like this is a decorational image. Don't uh,
okay?
don't announce it.
Okay, so that would be it would be better to leave it as empty than to actually give it a message inside of alt or a
Yes,
piece of text.
yes.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that's cool. Okay.
And that's also the case for these three icons. I would give them empty alt attributes because they essentially repeat the same information you already have in your header here. So what happens now is that if you can't see, then the same information is being read twice without delivering additional information. It's just telling you the compressed FM podcast,
Hmm.
and then it's
Okay.
telling you that this is an image of the logo of the compressed FM podcast. And it's sneaking in additional information again.
Yeah.
So it's adding context, which is
Is not
not what an alt
provided.
attribute is for.
Yeah.
Uh, Here, because well, two reasons. The images don't link anywhere. So if you have an image with an alt of YouTube channel for James Q Quick, then that sounds like it would be a link,
Mm.
because if you describe an image as YouTube channel for James Q Quick,
Oh,
that
and
wouldn't
it's
make sense.
yeah, because this is not actually the YouTube channel. It's just YouTube logo. If
Yeah,
we yeah, okay. Very
yeah,
interesting.
and then like you can differ on opinion about this. So very strictly speaking, this image is the YouTube logo, so you could give it the alt attribute or the alt value of YouTube logo,
Mhm.
and then that would be correct. What I would probably do is give it an empty alt attribute because it's just repeating the same information
Yeah.
as already in the header, which sits right next to it. So you get repetition, which is
Repetitiveness.
annoying,
Yeah.
uh, and and you can also say like this is actually it's just a decorational image again. Like if this image is hidden, no information is lost. Also for us,
Yeah.
no information is lost.
Fair enough. I guess there could be a slight counter argument for the original way that you mentioned as an
Yeah.
option, which is like getting full audio context for what is there visually, but
Hmm.
knowing that that logo is there doesn't provide additional content or it doesn't provide additional context to the content that is there because they're
Yeah.
hearing
And
everything. They would
like
just be missing.
both
Yeah.
both explanations are perfectly fine,
Yep.
and those are more or less choices. Um, so whatever feels right for you,
Yeah. Okay.
uh, go for that.
Cool.
And then like there's other stuff as well, like if you have attributes or uh, if you have like responsive images, but it doesn't give you any other warnings. So Polypane will also give you warnings if you write weird things in your alt attribute. So things like if you use a bunch of emoji, those are actually very
Mm.
uh, long when they get pronounced. Like we see an angry looking emoji, and then the screen reader will say uh, emoji with frowning face,
Mhm.
and that takes quite long. So it'll give you a warning for that. Um, if you start your alt attribute with this is an image or this is a
Yeah.
picture, it'll give you a warning for that.
Which
If
is
you
my typical inclination. That's my initial
Yeah,
reaction
but
is to do
that
something like
makes
that.
it makes sense
Yeah.
because you're here to write an alt
About what the
attribute
thing
of the
is.
image.
Yeah.
And if someone asks you what's the image about, like naturally you would say
Say
the
it's an
image is
image.
about,
Yeah. Yep.
but you should cut that piece out and then just do the rest because the browser already says that this is an image. Um, so it'll give you hints for that as well, but doesn't show any warnings here. So good job.
Mattia is asking if it would Be better if those are background images instead of image tags. I'll be honest, I know very little about how actual CSS background images work, which is
Um,
a good reason why I don't use them, is just lack of knowledge.
so in terms of accessibility, it doesn't really matter if you use an empty alt attribute.
Mm,
Um, other than that, there's not really like a semantic difference between image with an empty alt attribute and a background image.
okay.
You can position them differently. Some things are easier with background image. Some things are easier with images on the page. So there's not really again, not like a wrong and right
Yeah.
in this situation.
Okay.
Now, in terms of links, what Polypane does is it finds all the links on your page, and then it checks them. So it tries to see if they exist. And what you can see here is that you link to about without a slash at the end. But probably if we go to that site or to that URL, then your server adds a slash at the end. So what happens there is your browser goes to slash about, because that's what your URL here
Hmm.
links to. It asks the server, hey, give me slash about. Then the server goes, nuh-uh, you need slash about slash, and it sends that back to the browser. And then the browser goes back to the server and it says, give me slash about slash, which is the 301 redirect.
Hmm. I wonder why that is. Why the server is that standard for servers to add that?
It's a configuration
Okay.
you can make.
And I don't know where that
S-
configuration would be.
yeah, so the easy fix is just make sure that in your navigation have slashes at the end. Practically, like, this gives you a minor SEO penalty, and like a minor speed penalty, because the
Oh, because it's
browser
having
has
to
to
do
go
the redirect.
has
Yeah,
to go to
okay,
the server twice.
okay.
That's
Well,
really milliseconds,
yeah,
um,
but worth
but
noting.
worth noting, and it's an
Yep,
easy fix.
cool. Yep, just updated all of those.
Mhm.
And the podcast one is has
So
extra stuff there.
yeah, so right now it's hidden because I'm checking here, but that's fine. You have it set to blank, so it opens in a new page, and then you
Mhm,
have a relation of no opener and no referrer. Nowadays, browsers add that behind the scenes, but it used to be if you didn't add that no preferrer and no reference or no opener, then the page you opened would have access to your page, and it could like execute JavaScript, etc., on your page.
mm,
So that's a security concern.
yeah, absolutely.
Um,
But now
and
that
that's
browser takes care of that regardless?
Yeah, yeah,
They just
browser
added to
takes
you?
care of
Okay,
that regardless.
didn't know that, okay. And then that
Um,
that has listed a 308. Is that like
yeah,
a
so
link to an external website, basically?
no, so you have 301, which is moved permanently, and you have 302, which is moved temporarily.
Mhm.
And then for some reason, like, those weren't spec'd quite the way they wanted to. So there's now also 308, which is permanent redirect.
Mhm.
Uh, don't ask me what the difference is.
Okay.
It's just a thing that your server returns. So your server is configured in a specific way where it says, actually, I'm going to send a 308 and not a 301. Because it can send any number it wants. So if you were to link to LinkedIn here, LinkedIn very often returns 999 as a header code, which doesn't exist. But it doesn't matter because it's the web and
Yeah.
the browser will just fix it. Um, And then another thing I wanted to call out, which you've done again really well, is you have these YouTube, Twitter, and Discord links, which are icons, but you've given them an accessible name so that even though they're icons, and we can see this is the YouTube logo, this is the Twitter logo, people using assistive technologies also get the same information. And this is actually one of the things I see go wrong on many, many different websites, because they just add the image and add the link and think they're done.
I'll think about it. Yeah.
And that's not how it works. And this is like the perfect way.
Cool.
Then lastly, focus order. Focus order, and we'll go back to the homepage, I think.
So focus order would be like if you're tabbing through.
Yeah.
The
So
page,
if
right?
you're tabbing through the site, see we have a bunch more here, and this list gives you the tab order, but that's not really visual enough. So I also have this overlay.
That's so cool.
Which just gives you numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you can see that this makes sense, right? You want your focus order to follow reading direction. So left to right, top to bottom. So if Polypane notices that like the focus order goes the wrong way, and on English languages, that's if the focus order goes to the top left or back to the top left, it'll show a warning for that. But this is all very logical. And that means that people using the keywords to tab through your page can get a good mental model of what happens when they press tab.
Yeah. That's cool. I've never seen anything like that, like a visualizer for like tab flow. What was the word you used for it? Not tab flow, but
Focus order.
focus order. Okay.
Because the tab key changes the focus.
Yep. That's cool.
And just for fun, there's also like a regular accessibility check. There's one button here. Oh yeah, so the hamburger button, the menu, that doesn't actually have an
The
accessible
area,
name.
so area label would take care
Yeah.
of that. Okay.
And then another thing you could do is tell the browser that this button actually opens a menu. And for
Does hamburger button make sense as an area label? Is that
no, because it's a button, so it does an action. So you want to describe the action.
okay?
So if you go to
So
this
just
URL, which is polypane.app/blog/the perfect responsive menu, then I actually explain how the Polypane one works, which visually it looks very much the same as yours. So what I do here is I have a button, and that has an area expanded of false. So that tells the browser that actually the menu that it's controlling is not expanded, it's hidden. And an area controls of menu, and that tells it that it controls the thing called that has an ID of menu. And then when you click the button, you set the area expanded to open or to true. And then when you close it, you set it back to false again. And then that helps people using assistive technologies understand what's happening when they click this button.
Really cool. And you didn't have a label, you didn't have an area label in yours. But that is if you go back to the markup?
No, I have it
You have the
named menu.
text. Yeah.
And then let's see, and Oh, right. So I put an SVG in it, and the SVG has the area label of menu.
Okay. Okay. So I could add the area label directly to my button
Yeah, that would also
of
work.
menu,
Hmm.
and then set area controls to, in this case, mobile menu is the ID of the thing
Yeah.
in mine. Okay.
So that's a thing to fix, and then this link, the link to home,
Mm-hmm.
it also has no text.
Mm.
And usually, what you want to do there is, even though it says James Q Quick,
It's an SVG, not text.
yeah, so you can do two things. You can add James Q Quick as a label, or you can say, well, this is the logo that goes to the homepage. So I'm going to add a description that's descriptive of what the link does and not of what it looks like.
So I could add an
Because,
area label to the anchor tag and say link to home.
yeah,
Okay.
or homepage, or home, or
Oh, because
something
I don't
in
need to
that.
clarify link because it's an anchor tag.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Um, and that is kind of counter to what I just said. Like, you want to have equivalent experiences. Like, you
Mhm.
don't want to add extra content or context into
Yeah.
area labels.
Right.
The reason that here it's like permitted is that the logo in the top left of a home or of a web page linking back to the home page is such a common pattern that, as a sighted user, you expect to click on the thing in the top left
Mhm.
to be
And
able
go
to go
back
to the
home.
home page, regardless of what it looks like.
Okay. Yep.
And so, by making the label spell that out, you give that equivalent experience.
Yeah. Yep. That makes total sense. I like that.
Um, so there are a few other things we can check. Um, a few. Um, we can run a contrast checker through your site, but you have no issues. All your contrast is great.
Okay.
So no worries there. If you didn't have enough contrast, Polypane would suggest better colors for you.
Mhm.
Um, and I believe even if we go to like the higher thresholds, you still also have more than enough
Mm.
contrast.
Okay.
So perfectly done. You can try and detect small text, but there's no
Stuff that
small
would be
text
too
found.
small, or
Yeah,
like stuff
so
that's too small, or that's actually the small tag.
oh no, stuff that's too small.
Okay.
So that would be
Yep.
regular text that's smaller than 12 pixels, or form elements that are smaller than 16 pixels. Because if your form elements are smaller than 16 pixels, then mobile phones will zoom in your page if you focus the input. And it will zoom it out so as much as needed to make the input 16 pixels. But if you have like a perfectly optimized mobile design, you don't want that to zoom in, because then it'll suddenly look like suddenly broken. So gives a warning for that, and also explains like this issue.
Mhm.
Um, I think this one's fun. Readability. So this chops up your entire site into its discrete sentences and then checks them for how readable they are. And then it gives you
Mm.
a score based on the automated readability index. Um, in short, green is good, uh, dark red is bad.
Yeah.
Um, the text you have here
Yellow
is
somewhere in between.
yellow is somewhere in between.
Yep.
Um, and we can click through to. I'll just close this one. We can click through to a blog, because presumably it has much more content.
I may have broken those images. I was messing with stuff today.
But yeah, so you can see all looks pretty good. Other things we have, so hostile CSS is fun. What this does is it injects a bunch of CSS into your page, and you can use this to check whether or not, like if you use web components, whether or not they're correctly closed off, or if like this garbage style seeps into your components and overwrites them. Have you worked or looked at web components before?
Not really.
Okay, so one of the things they can do is they can like encapsulate their elements, and then all the CSS of the rest of the page doesn't apply to that element. So it's like a self-contained styled thing, which is very useful. And then this one like checks whether or not you've actually configured that correctly.
Okay.
Just for fun, we can also disable the CSS.
Nice.
And what this helps us do is see if the page still makes sense. You see here that this image is very large. So if the CSS fails to download, then people have to scroll past a really large image. What you could do, and it's not important, but what you could do is add a width and a height attribute to this image, because they'll get overwritten with CSS anyway. But then if the CSS doesn't load, you can still contain it a little bit. And if you give it a width and a height in the HTML with the correct aspect ratio, the browser can also render it slightly faster because
Okay.
it already knows the aspect ratio.
Mm-hmm.
But this is like way out there
Yeah.
in terms of things you could improve.
Fair enough. Yeah. Brady, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. This is People are commenting on how much they're learning, and I'm thinking the exact same thing. The amount of things I've learned in this stream is pretty wild.
Yeah, so there are a couple of more tools in Polypane to do checking. Oh yeah, I forget half of them. But we can also check your web vitals, and we'll just reload. And now they're good again. So this dot here, if you hover over it, it shows you your web vital score, and it also checks the Crux data, which is the online database that Google maintains, that you can query for your own site, and that then tells you like what's the average experience of people across the world with regards to your website.
Okay.
So the bars you see, the green, orange, and red ones, those are the percentages of people that have a good, needs improvement, or poor experience with your website in terms of cumulative layout shift, largest contentful paint, interaction to next paint, or first contentful paint. And each of these are like things you can check in a browser that give a different type of quality. So cumulative layout shift, for example, is how much does your page shift as it loads. So for example, with the image, if your browser doesn't yet know how large the image is or what the aspect ratio of an image is, it can't preserve
Decide
space
where
for it.
everything. Yeah.
So it'll have no height and then push down everything. Largest contentful paint is what is the element that makes up most of the first visual impression and takes the longest to actually show. And you can see like 88% of people have a great experience here. And then if you want to figure out which element is that, then you can click the eye
Mm,
icon and it highlights the image, and that's perfect because the image is the largest thing
mhm.
on this page.
Yep.
Um, so there's nothing to improve here. Um, Interaction to next paint is a really new one. So interaction to next paint was added like late last year, I believe, and it actually measures like how long is the delay between a user clicking something on a page and the page actually responding. So you can imagine that a page that has a ton of JavaScript going on is going to be slower in
Yeah.
handling that than a page with no JavaScript.
Yep.
Um, but like again, across the board, all looks great. If you look at it on mobile, because Google Crux actually measures two discrete values, like for phones and for desktop. So if you compare it to phone, then it's still pretty good. Usually, what you can see, like interaction to next paint, is 97% have a good experience, while on a phone it's 79,
Mhm.
and that makes sense because phones are much less powerful.
Yep.
So any JavaScript on the page is going to take longer on a phone. But again, across the board, you score really well here.
Cool. This has been a ton of fun. Like, especially I feel like this would be a great tool to teach all like exactly what we're doing to teach these concepts to people
hmm
because it calls them out for you. So you like just practically speaking, you use this like when you're working on a website, this is what you use full time. Do you use this for
Yeah.
just like regular browsing and stuff too? Like does this replace Chrome for you completely?
No.
Okay.
No. So
Specifically for development?
it's not great at having like a bunch of tabs open,
Mhm.
etc. Um, I use this when I'm building anything like
Yep.
content pages, uh, apps,
Any web, yeah.
any web stuff.
Yep.
It does take some getting used to, of course.
Mhm.
Seeing your screen in multiple sizes. But then, if you don't like that, you can press B or use the layout here and have like
Oh, cool.
a
Just go back to
more
full.
traditional
Yeah.
experience. But you still have all the cool things that Polypaint gives you.
Mhm.
Like you can very quickly turn on rulers, for example, and then make sure everything's
Oh,
aligned.
wow. Yeah, that's cool.
Um, you can do a color picker if you want, and it also shows you like accessibility info.
Mhm.
One thing I particularly like in Polypaint is that you can press Option or Alt, and then of course demo gods. I'll just switch back to right. I need to click. I broke some stuff in this. It's the downside of always running your own betas.
Is
But
yeah, then
you
yeah.
you can hold Option or Alt on Windows, and then whatever's under the cursor gets
Oh, it
inspected,
gives you all the yeah, okay,
and it
that's
gives
cool.
you like the dimensions, the
I
contrast
like that,
ratio,
yeah.
the rendered fonts, the specific margin
Wow.
values, accessibility info. So that's how I could very quickly see that this one had an accessible name, because it
Yep.
says so right in the pop-up.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and let me see if I can find that image. No, it sits behind this
Behind
image.
everything,
But
yeah.
but so if you have an image, it shows you the alt attribute, so you can very quickly check that. If you have a link, it shows you where the link goes
Mhm.
to,
Wow. So
and you
good.
you still get that even though this is like a regular
Kinda regular viewing experience.
regular viewing experience. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's awesome. I think I'm gonna have to do something with it, like a quick video, because like, this just deserves for many more people to know about it for so many different reasons. This is really incredible.
Thanks.
This is probably the most I've learned it like live during a stream in a long time, which is really fun.
Cool. Happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's also what I'm trying to implement in Polypane. Because like if you go online, there's a lot of tools that tell you everything you do wrong with a
Mhm.
website, and that's great. But if you're a developer, you're usually like under a deadline,
Mhm.
and your boss doesn't really care because they don't know. So if a tool tells you you do it wrong, you have two options. You can make your deadline and or ship the feature and make your employer happy, or you can go to Google and Stack Overflow and GitHub issues and figure out what should I be doing instead.
Yep.
So what I really want to do with Polypane is not just tell you like the header is missing, but also you probably want a header because or
Mhm.
um,
That
this image
context is
or
super helpful. Yeah.
yeah, or this alt attribute is wrong, but it's wrong because you use image, or if there's a contrast issue, I can tell you like this color is wrong, and then you as a developer have to go back to your designer and beg for a new color. Um, but you don't want to do that. You just want to get a color and get on with your life. So Polypane gives you a color. Um, and I think that really helps. And I would really like more tooling to do that. Because,
Oh, you can
yeah, your tools should just really help you develop websites, I think.
yeah. Yeah. So cool. I'm excited about this. Let's see what this question is from Matia. I can ask a little off topic in terms of website performance. Let's assume I want two divs to have text align center. Is it better to create a double selector for the rule or give a utility class to the div since having a heavier HTML but lighter CSS? I imagine you could get different answers in here.
Yeah,
I love
it doesn't
utility
matter.
classes.
Um, if you like utility classes,
Yeah.
use that. If they are both separate components that should have their own styling,
Mhm.
then maybe it makes sense to use uh,
To reuse
custom
that.
CSS for that.
Yeah.
You can even mix and match. Um,
Mhm.
in the end, I think with these things, it's more important that if you work in a team, yes, I'm
Yeah,
very
how's
Dutch.
Yep.
So if you work in a team, you need to all be on the same page.
Yeah.
If one of the folks is using utility classes and the other is handwriting CSS, that's going to be really annoying. But if all of you use
Mhm.
utility classes or all of you write CSS, then that's much more manageable.
Yep. Agreed. Also, for people, if you haven't actually clicked on linking on the website looks beautiful with lots of like great embedded videos to kind of show you what some of these different things do. This looks like really, really good. Um, I need to go run and eat some lunch because in a great way, I think we originally I don't know what was on the calendar invite, probably an hour. Um, but in a great way, we went over because of the value of this. And some of this is like so many people have commented about how much stuff they've learned. So I think we're all kind of on the same page there. Thank you everyone for hanging out with us and for asking questions and commenting and stuff. Been a ton of fun. I really enjoyed it. Make sure to go check out Polypane. I'm about to like my house is about to be in shambles for the next like week and a half, but after as quickly after that as I can, I would like to record a quick video to highlight this and maybe we can do some sort of like special promo code or something for people.
Yeah,
So if people are
happy
watching and interested in
to
that,
chat about
then
that.
yeah, keep an eye out on the channel over the next month or so, and maybe there'll be a new video with a promotion of some sort so that people can take advantage of all the cool stuff. So, Killian, thank you for joining. You've offered to talk about this for a while and finally got the time to like sit down and do it with you because that's always been my biggest thing with new tooling is when I get a new tool, sometimes I don't know where to start type thing,
Yeah,
and I have very limited amount of time to go and figure it out. So to have someone like walk through and just show, here's how this works and what it does is incredibly helpful.
Yeah,
Um,
my pleasure. I had a lot of fun,
yeah.
and I hope I didn't hurt your feelings too much.
No, not at all. No, it's I am all for learning. That's like Todd Libby, who was in the stream, Chris Mars, who were in the stream from a accessibility perspective. Those types of people who are willing to call things out and not only call it out, but use it as a teaching experience
Yeah,
is extremely valuable. And that's
absolutely.
exactly what we did. So that was perfect. I don't know if this is a joke or not. Lauren's on YouTube is asking if it's polypane or polypane, how you pronounce it. That seems like the same thing. I don't know if there's like a is there a different Dutch way to pronounce it that I don't know?
So, um, there is a Greek way you can pronounce it,
Mhm.
polyphony,
Okay,
but
yeah,
I don't use that.
okay. Polypane,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Cool. Alright, well, I'm gonna go ahead and, end the stream. Again, thank you everyone for joining.
Bye-bye.
Next week will be a mess for me in my house. So I don't know if I'll be live at all, but we'll see. But thanks everyone.